Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today we're chatting with Emily Perron, who specializes in helping coaches hire freelancers that make sense. That might mean hiring a virtual assistant, and it also might mean deliberately not hiring a virtual assistant. This conversation probably, on the surface, seems more pertinent to a coach with a busy practice, someone who's ready to hire help, but I'd encourage even newer coaches to listen closely. At some point, it will sneak up on you, and you'll realize that you've run out of bandwidth and need help. This conversation rolling around in the back of your mind will come in real handy. The first thing you need to do, Emily tells us, is define the role, and that's pretty fun. Is it truly an assistant, someone to keep your inbox and calendar squared away? Is that really what you think you need? Or is it a content manager or a project manager or a writer? Start with a task list. Figure out what the tasks are you need help with, and the appropriate type of help will make itself known. And if it doesn't, Emily can help you figure it out. A quick promotional message, and then we'll be on our way with this episode. We've been working on something pretty cool behind the scenes that I'm excited to tell you about. My Primal Coach is a convenient app-based health coaching program that delivers daily lessons with actionable tips for losing weight, gaining strength and energy, sleeping better, managing stress, and more. It provides personal one-on-one coaching to help you stay on track and reach your wellness goals in just 12 weeks. My Primal Coach is developed and delivered by the team behind Primal Health Coach Institute, the first and preeminent ancestral health coaching school in existence. Primal Health Coach Institute has trained and certified thousands of successful health coaches across 75 countries around the world. We are experts in behavior change, and we understand how to get clients the results they desire. Our mission at My Primal Coach is the same as our mission with the Primal Health Coach Institute: to help 100 million people reclaim health and wellness through education and coaching. It's pretty exciting and very, very cool. Check it out for yourself at myprimalcoach.com. We love to see who's listening out there, so take a screen grab of your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. By the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. I feel like you'll get one of two things out of this conversation. A realization that you need a different kind of help than you thought you needed. That's what I got out of it. Or a vision of a future where your coaching practice has grown to the point that you need to bring on someone to offload the items that aren't in your wheelhouse. Either way, pretty exciting. Please enjoy our conversation with Emily Perron.
Emily Perron, how are you today?
Hi, Laura. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
We are super excited to have you. Erin and I were just talking with you before we got started about how we're excited to pick your brain as to, where we can leverage somebody else's help. So before we kick off, the first step in every conversation is we would love for you to just share your story about who is Emily, how did you get here, and just sort of your origin story.
Yeah, of course. So after college, I studied psychology and English in undergrad. And shortly after college, I got into a Fortune 500 company, and I was working in event planning and then in marketing. And during that time, I also earned a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with that. I mean, I was working in marketing. I didn't have a business background. And over time, it became clear that I really wanted to get into coaching. And so I left my job to pursue my career coaching path. And I did that for a few years. And that's when I hired early, because in the corporate world, I mean, I had been a manager. I was always the person that was, brought in to help anytime the department needed to replace someone or add a role. I was part of the hiring process. So I was like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I've got this fancy education. I have all this corporate experience. I can do this. And so I get into it. I hire my first VA. She was fantastic. And then I couldn't replicate it. Like I just posted a couple sentences in a Facebook group, like everyone does, for a virtual assistant. She was good for a while. We eventually parted ways and I couldn't do it again. So it was at that point, this is like 2017 now. I just set out to figure it out. I wanted to figure out, how do you find the best freelancers? What are they looking for? And I really thought it was just for me so I could hire better. And then in 2018, I started having my friends, I was getting success. My friends started asking me for help. And I got connected with a food blogger who wanted me to do it for her. And then really that's like the rest of it. Then like, that's what I've been doing now. I'm more of in the business space, and I help primarily bloggers, coaches, consultants build their teams, like find the best freelancers.
Okay.
With my process.
Cool. So you work with these entrepreneurs, we'll call them one-on-one, and help them understand what they need and then help them find the people, everything?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yeah, because first you have to figure out those right roles, right? I feel like so much of the industry, like digital business in general, and coaching and blogging in particular, it's just like everyone's looking to VAs, right? To solve everything. And that's not always the right role. I mean, it's the default and it's what it looks like everyone is doing, but we're not really able to see into other people's businesses. And so that's what I've been doing. Getting the right roles in place and then finding the people to fill them.
So what did you learn from that exercise of jumping in and hiring a VA and saying, okay, we eventually had to part ways and I couldn't replicate it. You know, what were the lessons learned from that you carry forward working with your clients and your own business?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is that hiring freelancers in particular, which is what so many entrepreneurs want to do, because you can hire them for 3, 5, 6 hours a week, or 10 hours a month. You can get this small amount of support very affordably. But what I found was that it's so different than hiring employees. So, everyone pretty much has been an employee at some point, right? We've all experienced the hiring process. And so we know the basic steps, but it doesn't work for freelancers. Like we can't do what the big companies are doing because we're not them. We're not Amazon. Amazon can do whatever they want because people are going to apply no matter what the job is. So, I mean, if you have $1 billion budget, then you can do whatever you want to, but I don't have that. I mean, spoiler alert, it's like not happening over here.
Yeah. I think that's actually so insightful. And as you were sharing that, this idea that we've all been hired before, we've all worked for somebody before. I realized, so I hired somebody a few years ago and it wasn't great, didn't work out well. And the reason was because I went about it as like an employer hiring an employee, but that's not really what I needed. And something that was like there was a lack of clarity around this person's role, because I was like, you're going to be my helper, and you're just going to come on and I'm going to pay you and you're going to help me. And that I wasn't clear on what that looked like. She wasn't clear on what it looked like. Nothing was getting done. That wasn't her fault. That was my fault. But not because she was a terrible assistant, but because I had zero clarity. But also, like, I had zero clarity on what tasks. So I don't know, is like, do we do a list of tasks that you either want to offload because you don't like them or you don't have the skill set, or that just aren't getting done? And then do you say, and I have this much money? And then like, how do you, I know this is probably all your trade secrets, but where do you start, I guess?
Yeah, I start with the task list. I mean, I do it for myself and for my clients as well. Like we have to start with what needs to be done, and then looking at what are those pain points. So the stuff you're not good at, the stuff you hate doing, the things you're putting off forever, that a specialist could just jump in and take care of them, because they don't have the baggage and the mindset. They have the background, like they're really good at writing blog posts or writing social media content, or, things like that. And so they don't have the same barriers that we have to getting things done. And so, yeah, I always start with the task list, and then I look at where do we group things together into like roles, right? Because I see it a lot where people just, it's a laundry list. I mean, it's 5 jobs in one. And the freelancers, they are really attuned. I have interviewed a lot of freelancers at this point. And at first I was interviewing them just to understand, what are you looking for? Like, what are you looking for in a client? What are you looking for in a job posting? Like, what gets you to apply? That's what I was looking to understand.
I love that you interviewed freelancers and asked them what they're looking for in a job posting. Can you maybe share
Right.
what you learned in that?
Yeah. So one of the things they're looking for is they're looking for, are you clear? Because they can tell if you're clear. So they are looking for specifics. If you're really vague, they're not applying. If it looks like the laundry list, if it's looking like you're looking for 5 people to fill this, if this would be 5 departments in a big company, they're staying away from that. They know these warning signs. The other thing they stay away from is the complicated language. If it's really complicated, like you're just using big fancy words to make it sound better. Again, if they can't at a snapshot understand what you're looking for, those are all flags and they are going to stay away. And this is one of the things I learned too through interviewing them, going through this research process, is that they only have so much time and energy to put into job applications.
Mhm.
And so they are super selective about which ones they're going for. And so I think the most fun part to me over these years and everything I've learned is that I consistently have 30 to 60 people apply with my like the way I'm doing my job postings. Like, it works.
So are there,
And really,
I have a question for you too about hiring freelancers. So clarity, that makes complete sense to me. I would imagine before you apply anywhere, you want to know exactly what it is you're getting into. But have you found whether there's a preference towards big jobs versus small jobs? I think a lot of people starting out too might have like one project right now. Like an example, I needed to put together a PDF, like a downloadable PDF for an opt-in. And so it was one project and I had all the content and I had all the pictures. I just need someone to make it pretty. So someone who knew what they were doing could probably get it done in like an hour, and if they do a really good job, then the next project, I would likely just reach out to that person rather than putting together a whole other job posting. So is there an appetite for some of these freelancers for being able to do a lot of these little jobs and getting paid here and there and building then a portfolio of someone that comes back to you every time? Or do they tend to be drawn more to like the big payday, or does it depend?
Yeah, it kind of depends. I think the ones that are willing to do more of the project base are usually more starting out. So they're probably in their first year. It doesn't mean they're starting out in their career. It just means they're building their client base. So they tend to be more willing to do it. But with that comes a little more risk because they may not make it. They may leave freelancing. They may, just go back to full-time employment. Where the people that have been doing it a little longer, they're looking for more ongoing work. But yeah, it can depend, but that's kind of the trends that I've been seeing.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think what's interesting, another chord that you struck is that these freelancers, you said they only have so much time and energy to put into the application. And I was thinking there was a period of time in my life where I thought I was going to go off and be a freelancer because I was a kind of a writer early in my career. And I thought, I'm going to go freelance it. And I found that if the application was asking me to go back and give like 25 writing samples and I had to track those down, and I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
That's just me. I mean, I probably didn't have my heart set on being a freelancer because that felt like too much work. So I think that's actually pretty insightful because, going back to my example, when I hired the person I hired, I went with somebody who I knew, who had done my program, kind of was familiar with it, seemed like a good fit. I didn't really know what her skills were. Now my pendulum has swung. It's like the next time I do that, I'm going to be so particular. It's going to be like, but it can't be too fussy, right? I'm going to alienate people. So, which is interesting because again, you go back to having applied for jobs, you get your resume, you get your cover letter, you get your references, you get, supply your educational credential, and there's an expectation of crazy jargon. There's an expectation of like bulleted lists that don't even you can't even wrap your mind around what the job actually looks like. So we're really reinventing the wheel here a little bit. what it sounds to me like, which I think the wheel was due for some reinvention anyway. So do you encourage, here's my question. That was a long preamble, but here's the question. Do you encourage your clients when they're hiring freelancers to absolutely simplify and bring the application down to the absolute brass tacks? Like, do you help coach the client to like, okay, what do you really need to know about this person?
Yes. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things. That's a great point. I mean, there's all these standards. So I've moved away from cover letters. And that is one of the things, it's changed my world. And it makes it easier for the freelancers to apply, because then you can ask for those extra things. You can ask for their website, ask for their portfolio. If they are professional freelancers, they should have those things. If they're even 6 months in, it's kind of becoming more table stakes. If you want to freelance professionally, you need those things in place. And then I ask everyone the same few questions. And so by doing that, then it doesn't become so big.
What are those questions? You
said well, the first one is always just, why you want the job, like why you're interested in this position, which kind of covers the cover letter, but it makes it more clear and more fair, because now everyone's answering the same question. The second one I ask is, what is your zone of genius? Because I want to hear what they want to say. Like, I just want to hear what they think their zone of genius is, because I'm looking, does it match this role pretty well? Or is it something totally unrelated, which is fine. But then I don't want a freelancer. Like, I want people who are in their zone when they're working for me and for my clients, because that it's just the efficiency, the productivity is so much better when we can each be in the area that we're most energized by. And then I also usually check for if they have a full-time job or not. I just want to know that, because it's a little easier to work with freelancers who are freelancing full-time, that are building their own business. That's not a barrier all the time. But like I said, I just want to know. I want to know what I'm getting into, because the one of the challenges with freelancer resumes and LinkedIn profiles, it's hard to tell what's going on. Like, sometimes they just have multiple clients and they're in and out. And so I can't tell, like, are you full-time with one of these, or is it just multiple part-time things, clients come and go kind of situation? So it gets a little murkier. It's not as clean cut in the corporate days.
So what have you found, you're talking about task lists and kind of truncating these into things that are common and common skill set. Speaking from the health coaching world, I can probably guesstimate the things that I don't like doing that I would love to offload. But do you find some commonalities? So we understand generally kind of the problem with hiring a broad like VA right now, although I would like you to articulate that a little bit more. But from the standpoint of specifics, where are you finding people getting the biggest bang for their buck as far as specializing?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is social media management. Social media management this year is like the new thing. Like, it's what everyone is hiring. I'd bet 80% of my jobs that I've recruited for this year have been social media managers, which is, it's a fun role, but that's a really common one, because people hate scheduling their social media. They don't necessarily want to stay up to date on the platforms and like what's trending. Some people do, and that's fine. But, I'm seeing a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't necessarily want to play along with the platforms or jump on trends. That's not what they're into coaching for. Another one is, actually writing and editing can also be a really common one. And it's not because people aren't good writers. Sometimes it's too time consuming to do it yourself. And if you want to be doing blog posts or guest blogging or submitting articles to, different online publications, you really do need someone supporting you in that. I mean, it's a lot easier and simpler to pay someone for a couple hours of their time to put an article together. And then I'd also say project manager is also just such, a blessing, I guess. Like, it is the best gift. And I think it's a great alternative to a virtual assistant. They often have the same background. They've been virtual assistants. They have that kind of administrative skill set, but they can do more in your business. And it's really for people that are growing, you're starting to get a couple contractors in place. So there's just more to manage. There's more people, there's a little more project management, especially as you're building. If you're doing a lot of content marketing as part of your strategy, they can help with the editorial calendar. They can help manage the different pieces, and even managing you. Like, I think that's one of the things I miss. There's no one checking in on us as entrepreneurs. So I use my project manager somewhat as a manager to me to make sure I do my work as well.
Oh my gosh. I feel that. I feel like that's what I need, is like a middle manager. Like, I don't need, okay. The role that I want to hire for is, I don't have this clear, but just I want to hear your thoughts on this. Basically a repurposer. I want somebody to go through my whole body of work and repurpose everything from blog posts into social posts, from social posts into emails, from social posts into like maybe podcast scripts or something, like podcast topic ideas. Like this is years and years of old content that I feel like is good, and it's just kind of sitting there stagnant in its respective social media feed. Is that a role you've seen people hire for? Or do you think, like, what do you think about that? Like, is that the editor writer role? Is that the project manager role? Who's that person?
It's kind of a combo. It depends if you want them to do the writing also, or just direct the strategy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's how I see it shaking out. So I have my own social feed, which I have no problem. I like writing into it. I don't do it very frequently, but I like it. And then I have a social media platform for my program, and that's been ignored. And for me, it's like, I want to send people to my program social feeds and, have some content over there. So I want somebody to take, like, I have something like 8 old Facebook groups from this program that I ran. And inside those Facebook groups is all kinds of amazing discussions that the participants had, hundreds and thousands of Facebook posts that are about questions that these folks have asked. So like, I've got, FAQs to me are one of the best like sources of content. Like, so that's all, it all needs to be mined and organized. And there's so much potential content in there that's just, I'm not going in there. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to, you know what I mean? So it's somebody to go back into the very old archives of my whole thing and pull out the nuggets that have gone wasted and build something from it.
Yeah. Okay. This is great. So I would probably look for a content manager to do that. And then I'd also get a writer to actually do the execution piece of it. So when it comes to writing, unless you are, you're going to do that part, you might fill the role of writer editor. But yeah, I think a content manager would be really good. They'd probably have a project management background. So you could look in that vein, but look more specifically for someone with content management background where they're doing this. And it is a thing. I mean, especially in the blogging industry, it really is a thing because they're constantly repurposing and reusing and, looking at SEO and all of that. So yes, it is. It's a real thing.
Okay. So a content manager is different than a social media manager, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because to me, a social media manager is really just executing. They're giving you like your tips, like they're giving you the strategy more for social media, but I wouldn't necessarily give them everything you've got and have them organize it. And it sounds like you really need some kind of inventory built up of some sort.
Yeah.
And this could be a one-time project for a project manager or content manager to like come in and organize it. And that would be cool, right? Like they'd be down for that. That's a good example of what we were talking about earlier of like a project. So it's got a little meat to it. It's not just an hour of graphic design. This is going to be something, this is going to take some time. It might take a couple months to get it organized depending on how much there is.
I feel you, Erin, too, because, and I think coaches listening that have a few years under their belt have hours and hours of past content that they wrote very early on, super passionate, staying up till 2:00 in the morning, writing this stuff. And now they're a few years in here and they're too busy to do that. They know it's all there, but the idea of going back through that, first of all, you don't want to rewrite it. It's already there. So it just all needs to be repurposed. I've got programs that I've built and ebooks that I've built and all sorts of stuff that can all be repurposed. The Repurposer sounds like a great title, but I know what you mean. You need someone to manage the process there. So for folks that have been in this for a long time, or it doesn't even have to be a long time, you can produce an amazing amount of content in a year or two that you can then go back and just restructure it all. Like I have to rebrand everything. I need a rebrander. Is that a thing? Somebody that takes like stuff from like my previous iterations, right? My early
Yeah.
iterations, and then rebrand it all,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Project manager. It's super
Project
versatile.
manager.
It's a super versatile role.
Yeah.
It's a really talented group of people, and they're going to have the skills to get that done.
So my next question is for those folks listening who I know are there that are like, what do you do if you're just starting out? And so, I mean, Erin and I are big advocates for people just starting out, getting in and learning how to do this stuff on your own. I know it's a lot of work and it slows things down, but for most people, it's important initially to write your own content, right? Initially to kind of be present on social media, if that's your outreach strategy, what have you. But it's uber overwhelming, and there are a lot of people, I think, that it's a non-starter because it seems like so much. So if you were working with somebody who had the resources, the financial resources to hire some help to get started, which key roles do you think can help people kind of focus on what it is they really want to do, the coaching part? Right?
Yeah, I would have them look at what's the greatest pain point, like what's going to hold them back the most. Because I'm with you. I'm a big, and this is how I grew my business. I mean, this is how I figured out the recruiting stuff, was I had to learn it first. And then I was like, oh wait, like no one is telling people how to do this. So like I can be a resource on this. But yeah, I think it's really focusing in on like getting clear on what you need help with the most, like what is going to bring you the most relief, like quell the anxious, the overwhelm, pick those areas. Oftentimes it's stuff you're not good at. That's usually like the best spot to start, is the stuff that you have no idea how to, like, if you have no idea how to set up your email marketing system, that could be one that's good to outsource and then learn it from, you could also learn it from the contractor, kind of learn as you go.
Website building too. That's another one that comes
Yeah.
up, you know? So Erin and I both work for a school, and my role here is as sort of like admissions director. So I talk to a lot of people that are just entering into this. And strangely enough, that's one of the top questions I get is about, do you help me with this? Because I don't even know where to start. And I think there's a lot of angst around this because it just seems like this Herculean feat to get something up there. But, you know, once you've kind of really dabbled into it, there are so many different avenues you can go to get it written at a reasonable price these days. When I first started, it was 10 years ago. To try to pay someone to do that was really expensive. Now it's not nearly as bad. You know, and then if you can find someone who's a good freelancer to do that kind of stuff, holy cow. I mean, trust me, you're going to redo your website a few times. You're going to need new functionality in your website a few times, right? So this could be an ongoing role, and find somebody kind of that you trust. So, I mean, so for you and working with people that are just getting started, it's starting with that task list and just identifying the things that are the most overwhelming for you and starting there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think for myself personally, my personal advice coming through this process myself is just starting it with one thing at a time. Like, you don't have to be on all the platforms. You don't need to have the most amazing website. Like you said, it's going to change over time, and you're going to have to every few years, like, reevaluate some of these things as you grow and change. And we can't like project where we're going to be in 5 or 10 years to, like, you know, make the best path going forward. Just kind of have to be flexible and roll with what happens.
Right. Well, I feel like if I could go back and like 8 years and speak to beginner health coach Erin, I would say, okay, because to kind of piggyback off what Laura said, is like the marketing piece is the piece that one of the pieces that folks are like, I have nothing. I have nothing. I got nothing. I don't know how to do marketing. I was a shoe salesman before. I don't know how to do marketing, whatever their previous career was. So people don't know how to put themselves out there. But what they do know is they know about health stuff. Everybody has their zone of genius in terms of like this health coaching stuff. I know about this health stuff. So one of the pieces of advice we always give is like, well, just start writing or talking about what you know. So just put it on your social feed. Nobody's looking at first. It's all good. Just start putting it out there, host an Instagram live, host a Facebook live, start talking. Okay. So I'm going to go back to Erin 8 years ago. And I wish I'd had this content manager or some eyeballs who could look at the things I'm saying and say, ooh, this could be a little quote card. This could
Mhm.
be a YouTube video. And against Repurposer, because now Aaron of current time has to go back 8 years and try to pull all this stuff out with like shovels. That's going to be a huge project for somebody when I come around to hiring it. I just think that like when we get started, we should think about what it's going to be like in 8 years. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you got to have your website. Sure. Have your website built for sure. I guess a logo, if you think it's that important. I really don't, but also plan for what it's going to be like when your business has grown. And then you have to go back and regurgitate all this great stuff that you kind of let float away. I don't know. That'd be my pep talk. Somebody starting out.
That's brilliant. Like just start like cataloging everything as you're creating it is brilliant advice. Like because I had to go through this earlier this year. We finally created more of a content inventory so we could see like what's been an email, what's on the blog, and what's on social media. And it's all like in a spreadsheet now and beautiful and amazing. But yeah, it took a couple months of some help to get it there.
Yeah, I think that.
But you could start that at day one or, year one.
Yeah.
Day one.
Because when I think about all these Facebook groups that I have from my group program that I ran, which is what I want this person to go in mine, it's like the nuggets that I thought of off the cuff in a Q&A webinar, right? Q&A webinar, it's in a closed system, right? I'm there with my clients. We're having a Q&A. Somebody asks a really great question. I give a really great answer. And that stays in that closed system. Nobody else outside of the program gets to see that, but it was great. It was gold. And there's little moments of gold that every health coach at every stage in their building their business is that these moments of gold are just going to be left. They're just going to vanish if somebody's not cataloging them. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of like building a body of work, I think there's a real potential. I mean, any freelancers out there listening, I'm just going to go on record as saying I think that's possibly a really cool, like burgeoning freelance job. It's like, I'm the person that I'm the eyeballs and earballs on your content. I'm just eagle eyes on your content. Anything you say that's cool, I'm gonna take it and like put it up and make some stuff for you in this Dropbox folder so you have it if you did graphic or video. Anyway, that is my rant. I'm now done speaking. That's all I have to say.
So have you found there's like a natural inflection point for entrepreneurs when they, as far as getting started out, a natural inflection point where people they're just ready to hire someone? What's from an evolution of an entrepreneur, kind of from the very beginning to I've made it, where in that sort of evolution do you find people naturally just need help where they kind of become their own bottleneck?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of spots. I think one is a few years in, especially if they're nearing 6 figures. That's another spot, is 6 figures. It seems very consistent that entrepreneurs can kind of muscle their way through up to about 6 figures, but then they're working all the time, doing all the things, they're burning out. And so they're being forced to outsource at that point if they want to keep growing, or they have to just they basically just created a new job for themselves. Like they don't have a lot of freedom and flexibility because, to maintain the business right around that 6-figure mark is where it just starts to implode. You just can't take on more. I mean, the time is limited in some ways. There are so many hours you can meet with clients or, have group meetings with your programs. It is finite in some ways, where you have to start tapping into other people. And that's where I've been more proactive with this, because I'd gone that burnout route in the corporate world. I did not need to go down it again. So yeah, I think that's where you're talking about, looking ahead, like thinking ahead a few years of like what you're going to need and putting it in place a little earlier. This is again where freelancers are a great fit for that, because I mean, think of if you found a social media manager for $30 an hour who worked 3 hours a week, $90, like that's it. And you could, get your social media scheduled. Maybe you're jumping on trends. Maybe you're engaging more, or whatever it is. It could also be editing old blog posts and freshening them up so that they're better and stronger copy.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's some place around that inflection point where you don't feel as though financially you're rolling in dough, but at the same time, you're not going to grow past that point unless you're willing to spend some money. And so you've got to be willing to suck it up, because there's only time is the one resource that you cannot get back. You can make more money. That's the whole point of hiring somebody else, right? Is to, and I guess that's a great question. Which roles do you find kind of pay for themselves? If you really think about it.
Yeah, I'd say for a lot of people, social media manager and
Mm-hmm.
the writer editor. So if they're producing content or they're helping you create freebies, they're scheduling things. The project manager, those are a little less hard. They're less direct, right? There's less of a direct line to your sales and revenue from the project manager.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes they improve our quality of life. And so that, ROI, I think we can measure it in different ways. It's not always just financial. There's also, I think, like a time saving and a sanity measure as well that should be accounted for.
Yeah. I was thinking about a couple of folks that I follow that have really big businesses. One is somebody who I hired as business coach, and she's recently just, I think, brought on 3 additional staff. So she's got like 5 people working for her. And she's really transparent in her social feed. She said, the only way my business is going to grow is by bringing these 3 people on. So it's an upfront investment into their paychecks, but there's literally, I'm stuck here unless I bring this help on. I think that's such a refreshing way of looking at it. It can be hard to, a scarcity mindset around money, like it's all mine, I need to keep it. And this is where, being able to project growth is really important. But
I would say some early coaches really kind of need help with just the kind of financial and business and bookkeeping end of this kind of stuff too, and knowing where they stand financially. I mean, is that something that you work with people on as well?
Yeah, I haven't done as much of the bookkeeping side. Usually the people that I've worked with, they have their accountant and their if they need a bookkeeper, they have that already in place. A lot of times they're hired locally. You can do it virtually, but that's just what I've noticed is most people have their local connections to the people that do that. And so it's not as much of a freelancing thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can see that.
So let's think about this project manager role or any of these roles. How much do these folks need to know about what you do? Like, for example, do they have to understand health or nutrition or fitness? Is it ideal if, like, say you're a fitness coach, that your project manager understands fitness businesses? Or is there some benefit to having somebody who's outside of your industry so they can bring fresh perspectives? This is the other person I was thinking of. Julie Bauer, Paleo MG, huge brand. And she did a lot of cookbooks and food blogging stuff. She hired a project manager team, which is basically like an agency of project managers that just grow businesses, and found other avenues she could go into that she was kind of blind to. Like, you could make a fitness program, you could do a clothing line, you could do a gearbox. And these people aren't food blogger business building project managers. They're just business building project. You know what I mean? So they have a business acumen. So that really worked out for her. Like, her business exploded. What do you think about that? Do you think that, like, somebody like us should be hiring people who understand our industry, or is it more of like the skills they bring to the table irrespective of what industry you work in?
Yeah, so my perspective, the way I tend to look at it, I tend to go for the people that know their industry. I don't care that they know my business as well, because I want them to bring in that perspective from other areas into me. And so that's how I tend to do it. And that's what most of my food blogger clients tend to do that too. They don't necessarily want they don't want someone who's super into food blogging. And it's really hard to find those people. You can't just, if you're going to narrow in that far, these niches are getting so small. When you think of all of digital business, I'd rather have someone just with a background or maybe like in more of like a digital business than like in health coaching in particular.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. I'm thinking through this because I do want to hire this person. And the mistake I made last time was I hired somebody who knew my stuff, but didn't have the skills, right? I want to circle back though to, I think we talked about this off air. Why is a virtual assistant not always what people need? People think they need a virtual assistant, and you're kind of on team like, might not be. What is it about? Like, talk us off this ledge.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things going on with the VA role. One is anyone can say they're a VA, literally anyone. Like there's no standardization to it. I mean, technically there's some, like they should have a background in admin, but that's not the reality. What's really happening is writers are positioning themselves as VAs, social media managers are. And so it's just really murky. And so if you are trying to find a real VA, it's really hard because you'll get people pitching you social media and writing and all these people that don't fit your qualifications. But when you go for a writer or a social media manager, it's so much more clear that you fit each other, that they're fitting what you're looking for. That's the big thing. And then I think the other challenge in the VA space is, and I love virtual assistants. I have worked with some, I know some amazing VAs. And I think in general, the ones I know agree that the industry is just really hard. There are a lot of, VA and 10-day kind of programs, be a VA with no experience. And so that's part of it too. It's really hard as business owners. It's really hard to weed through the applications, especially when they have people teaching them like how to put a good application together. Then it becomes really hard to know what is what and what is truthful and what is honest and what is real, like getting the real evidence. Like, have you ever done this before is challenging because there's a lot of people like super new to it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like, let's be more transparent about that. So that's why it's not my favorite role, especially if you are around that 6-figure mark. You're getting to that point where you've been a few years in, you can't grow anymore from where you are. I feel like you deserve better than what is happening in that industry. And again, it's no individual VA's fault that that's what's happening. We just have to be, as business owners, I think we have to be really careful in that space and aware.
Well, and it might be too that especially within your first few years, the type of help you need is probably pretty specific. To Erin, kind of piggybacking on Erin's experience, when it's too broad or too vague, you probably end up spinning a lot of wheels and having people trying, so versus getting very specific about the one or two things that are really sort of standing in your way and keeping you from moving forward. Is there a time though that you think a VA makes sense based on where you are?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I actually have 2 VAs on my team, and one is a true assistant. She manages my email and my calendar. And she also, I'd say, is a hybrid with a project manager. She's also managing my Asana board. So she manages all of my content development processes. That is a VA to me. My other VA is just doing my social media graphics and scheduling. So again, it's like, yeah, that fits. Like a social media manager doesn't necessarily want to do what little part I need done with social media manager. And my VA doesn't want to be a social media manager. So it's really like beautiful and perfect because they are both true. They are true virtual assistants. It's not, there's no murkiness with them.
Nice. Okay. That's good to know because, and there's a place for VAs. Absolutely. Gal that I hired, I was like, yeah, I want you to manage my inbox. But that is actually not the help I needed. Like I wasn't really drowning in my inbox. Like that wasn't one thing that I struggle with, and I wonder if your clients do, is like, I don't know how many hours of work it is. Like how do you,
it might differ depending on their, how good they are at what they do.
How do you estimate it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I feel like at this point I have a good intuitive sense on it. I mean, they're going to be way faster than you. So if you're spending, 10 hours a week on something, you can usually like cut it in half because they're just going to like get in and do the work and be awesome, do their thing and get out and, go, they have other clients to work with as well. So I think I usually cut it in half. I often look like when I'm starting out with a role, I usually look right around the 5 hours a week mark. And I do that with my clients too, because I feel like it's either 5 hours a week or 10 hours a month. because writing sometimes it's just kind of a different, writing is usually more on a monthly basis, and it's usually starts at about 10 hours a week, or excuse me, 10 hours a month. But I try to give it so that there's at least enough that I can be like a pretty good client. Because at 1 hour a week, I mean, you'd need 20 clients just to fill 20 hours. I mean, that's not sustainable to be successful. So that's why I look in that 3 to 5, 5 to 7 range is what I'm usually estimating based on what I'm seeing people need, what I need done and what other people need done. But it is a challenge. I know what you mean, because what I can do is so not as efficient as someone who's so specialized and has amazing skills and experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this project that I'm thinking of, I have no line of sight on how long it takes. I literally haven't even started it, but I think there's something to that. I mean, this whole task switching idea, right? I've got clients to actually meet with, and then in between client calls, for me to turn the barge to now go and make some social content out of some of my existing content. It's like, I'm not even going to start doing that. But so if you have freelancers though, that maybe these freelancers working for 7 hours a week, and they have 2 or 3 other clients to cobble together a suitable income. Are freelancers really good at like time blocking? Like, I'm going to work on Erin's stuff exclusively so I can focus on it. And then I'm going to like work on Bob's stuff because it's a totally different industry. And I want to make because I can see, I mean, that's a lot of multitasking or task switching that maybe a freelancer ends up doing too.
Yeah, I think they tend to, that's what I've seen. I've seen that they tend to schedule certain clients for certain days. A lot of times also they'll work with the client. The editor that works with me right now, she has Mondays. So I know that if she's doing my stuff, it's on a Monday. And that helps me then also plan like what I'm getting to her. I know I have to get her stuff the week before of what I need done.
So maybe when you hire somebody, you could say, I want you to work on Thursdays.
So, okay. That's a great thing. So we can't tell them as freelancers, contractors, we can only tell them if they're employees, but we can ask them, and it can be an open conversation of, when they want to work on your stuff, just so you can be aware, but we can't dictate their schedule if they're a freelancer. I'm not an accountant and I cannot provide tax advice or, check with your attorney, refer to the IRS.
Okay.
It's
for the differences there.
That kind of brings up, I can't remember who we were having this conversation with, Erin, but the conversation around paying someone hourly versus a flat rate every week or month, because we were talking about, there's the idea of paying someone hourly that perhaps if they're done in no time, they're earning a lot less, or it takes them a really long time for whatever reason for a project that should have taken half that time, versus saying, I'm putting a value on this type of work on a weekly or monthly basis. This is what this kind of thing. And if someone gets it done in a lot faster, boom, that's just extra money in their pocket. But it also keeps them motivated to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. Especially maybe project driven, I guess, when you're looking to hire someone for something specific, that getting this project done means X amount of dollars to me. This is what I'm willing to pay for it. If you can get it done in 2 days, awesome. But, so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? how are freelancers typically paid, I guess?
Yeah, it's some of all of it, right? It's a mix. I know I can speak for myself and most of my clients, and myself, we usually start with hourly and then work up to more of that flat rate week or monthly fee, because it can be kind of hard in the beginning to know. And then also I think open conversations with the freelancers, if you go the hourly route, checking in those early weeks, those first few months, it's okay to be checking in to let them know what your limit is. You can set a limit on that and let them know, I'm really uncomfortable past 5. So at 5 hours, I want you to check in if you still have stuff to do this week. Things like that can happen. Because it can be hard if you don't have a super set package.
Right.
It can be hard if you're asking for more and they're out of hours for the week. So that's why I tend to like the hourly until, we have it down and I know what they're doing and we're comfortable. Then I feel more comfortable going to the more of the package system or the I guess it's a retainer,
Mhm.
it's sort of a retainer. I think we call them retainers, but I don't know if technically they really are, but
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. That's my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, that's why I asked the question. I mean, I would think depending on the stage of the freelancer and their skill set and the stage of the business owner and what they need, sometimes hourly is the best way to go.
Mhm. I think it
Sometimes,
can depend on the role too. Some social media managers, it just makes sense. Like if you're getting, you know, 55 pins and this many days of this and that and the other thing, if the freelancer's putting together packages and you know what you're getting and you don't like, you're good with that and you don't want the flexibility of adding things on, then I think that's okay too.
Nice.
oh,
Cool. Okay. So I know this is probably a question that's hard to answer, but when we're talking about hourly rates, what do they end up kind of being?
Yeah. So I can speak to like mostly the US based freelancers because that's where I'm based and what I'm most familiar with. So virtual assistants are usually in that $20 to $30 range. And then social media managers, I usually look in the 30 to 40, and project managers as well. Project managers are kind of 30 to 45. Those are the ranges that I look for, because I found that's where it's kind of like a sweet spot with those ranges. If you're looking less than 20 for a VA, it's really hard. I mean, once you think about self-employment taxes and all of that, and there's no benefits to being a contractor. So once they're paying for their own health insurance at, $15 an hour as a contractor, you don't have like, that's not a lot of take home for you. So that's why I found these sweet spots work, where it's like really good talent, good freelancers. So social media managers in that 30 to 40 range tend to have really good skill sets, good experience. They're efficient and productive, helpful.
Nice.
And then,
Yeah.
the sky's the limit. You can pay anything.
yeah.
There are people at all levels. So
Well, that's helpful though, because I would imagine if you're looking for any kind of help and you can only afford 20 an hour, you need to set your expectations accordingly, probably of what you're going to get for that pay. Because that's a great point. I think a lot of people don't realize is, these people are paying for everything because they're not an employee. They're not,
mhm.
yeah. So that's a really great point to consider. So tell us about your business specifically. So you work with entrepreneurs and you match them with the freelancers that they need. So I would imagine you probably have the clients, right? The people that you're helping, but then I would imagine you probably have a stable of freelancers, go-to freelancers, or not necessarily. Are you just creating jobs, or how does all
No,
that work?
so I find the people. So most of my clients start with an organizational strategy. And so we work together to craft the roles, like figuring out who's in place already, who are you working with, and then looking at what are the next couple roles you need to add to the team, what needs to be done next. And then from there, once that work is complete, then I oftentimes will recruit for them. And so then I am posting the job, I'm sourcing the candidates. I don't necessarily have like 1,000 people, I'm not
Mhm.
Upwork or Fiverr,
Right.
but I use those kind of platforms, especially Upwork, I found is a really good one for high quality freelancers. They have such a good captive audience already that I go out and find the people, and then I run the process. I do all the communication, I filter through the applications, and then I also do screening interviews as well before my client is meeting with them. And then my client's providing feedback along the way. So we're checking in, I'm sharing the top applications. I think one of the big things that they really love is, well, and they've told me too, is that they don't have to see all the crappy stuff that comes in. They don't have to deal with it. It's like they don't have to waste their energy thinking like, why did you apply, or why didn't you put this, or whatever. They don't have all that like mental chatter and emotional labor connected to it. And for me, it's easy because I love doing it, and I'm involved. And then the other thing I do also is I also have a digital program that walks people through my hiring process, so that it is setting them up for success as well. Because anyone can do what I'm doing,
Hmm.
truly.
I love that you're doing this. I get so excited about services like this because literally what would prevent me from hiring somebody is that I just don't want to, I don't want to go through any of that. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to start scouring Upwork. I don't have time to do it. So I'm just really grateful that we've got folks like you that are specializing in this stuff. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Thanks.
I love it.
Well, where can we find you? Where can people find out more about working with you or getting your help?
Yeah. So I am at emilyperron.com, and I have a free mini course over there on hiring. It's at emilyperron.com/mini course. And then I'm also on Instagram at emily.perron.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like your sweet spot, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm just putting this out there as bait for people listening. Does this sound like you are people that are knocking on that 6-figure threshold and they're stuck?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be stuck if you don't do something differently. And this is where I think sounds like you specialize in getting people the organizational structure that they need in order to move past the barriers.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yep. So that you can grow, you can do other things too. Sometimes it's just, you want more personal time, and that's okay.
Yes. Big
Absolutely.
time.
I mean, I see it happen certainly in our realm, but I see this in just about any business where you've got business owners that are either too frugal. They can't see past just the cost of something rather than an investment. Or I see it in folks that are to a certain degree a bit control freak, and I have to do it all to make sure it's going well, but this is creating this negative feedback loop. So, folks listening, if this is you, if you're in a place where you're stagnant and there are some roles that you just it's not your zone of genius, to use a term that you used, right? Something that's really getting in the way. It's time to reach out and find someone to help. So emilyperron.com, Perron, correct?
Yep.
I love it. Awesome. This was so fun.
Thank
you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
You got it. Take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.